What's going on, guys? So in front of you, you are looking at a variety of parts that are meant to kind of remedy an issue going on with the RV. If you look at some of these, you can probably figure out what they are and what they're for. And if you watched a previous video that I posted, you'll probably understand why I have these parts in front of me. Now, some of these parts were provided to me courtesy of my sponsors at etrailer.com. Some of these hoses right here. There are a lot of parts here, from cable clamps to some extra rubber hose right here to some large hose clamps right here. Got some gloves, more hose clamps. Got a bunch of different things, including some .4 brake fluid. Now, this is going to be an interesting video because I'm going to highlight a lot of things that kind of made all this come together and explain how I feel about this situation. So hang tight, I'll be right back. Anyways, I got it all stuffed into the box right now. This is all stuff that you can probably get from eTrailer. I ordered some of it off of Amazon only because I needed it quicker than I kind of thought I did. And eTrailer sent me the hoses because they said that they have those. But cool thing is, eTrailer carries all this stuff pretty much in stock in case you want to do like a brake conversion on your trailer, things like that. And I'll put a link in the description to some of their brake conversion kits and some of those things, if those are things you may be interested in. All right, so today's video is going to be really interesting because we are not going to take this RV out again until a problem is resolved. And that problem was actually done by the manufacturer. It was done at the factory. Now, I don't know if the problem that we're having is because our unit was a concept prototype unit, but it's really what I would consider to be poor workmanship, poor craftsmanship. Now, I've already engaged with the folks at Coachman and I've let them know what's going on. And you guys know I typically am happy to come out here and do this stuff myself. You know, I got all the components, got everything ready so I could come out here, show you guys how to fix everything. But then a lot of times people say, why don't you reach out to them and see how they handle the situation? So that's what I'm doing this time. I want to see what they're going to do to resolve this, considering it's kind of an important safety issue. So we're going to dive underneath it real quick so I can show you what's going on and really my opinion on what they did. All right, so this is propane, this is brake. This is my hydraulic brake line for the Dexter system. Going back, first thing that I don't really care for is it's actually right up against this self-tapping screw right there. See that? It's putting pressure and it's right up against that. That's not good. Sure, I can kind of bend it out of the way like that, and now it's far away from it, but that should never have been like that from the factory. Secondly, you can see underneath here that it's ran in a very peculiar way. And if you can't see that, let me explain what's going on. So right there is a splitter. That's a three-way splitter. You see this hard line coming into it, then you see another hard line branching off right there, and then you see a flexible line coming down right here. Well, that flexible line is going to the axle itself. So it's actually going to a splitter right there. And that splitter is branching off to both of the disc brakes for the forward axle. Well, this line right here coming off the side, this hard line, is actually going to the back axle directly. It's not going to another splitter. It doesn't convert into a flexible hose, but the hard line is going directly to that back axle, and it's going to another splitter just like that one, which is going to both of the back disc brakes. Now this is a very, very, very poor installation job. Now you can see right there that the screw that's holding that splitter in is just barely holding on. Now it's barely holding on because this cable right here, this flexible cable or hose, is too short. So that's only an 18-inch flex hose. That should have been at least a 24-inch flex hose to allow for some suspension movement. But anytime the suspension moves, it puts stress on that hose and it's pulling the screw out of the top. Now, I don't know if that screw is going into a backer. I assume it is, but it's on the verge of coming out. And if that comes out, there's nothing supporting that up there except the two hard lines, which means at some point you're going to have metal fatigue, especially with that back hard line going to the rear axle, and I'll show you some more on that here in a second. But you're going to have metal fatigue and you're going to have failure. And when you have failure of your brake system, well, that's pretty dangerous failure. So this is something that needs to be fixed. And when I reached out to the folks at Coachman, they were incredibly concerned about it. They absolutely expressed to me that this is not acceptable and this isn't how it should have been done. So hopefully there's some changes that are taking place on the assembly line, or at least from the folks who were responsible for installing this. It's just kind of concerning to me that, you know, even on my unit, this is how it was installed. So I sure hope that they take care of it and take responsibility of it, which it seems like they're going to. But this is certainly something that should have been inspected before it was delivered to me. And this is also something that you could typically see at a dealership lot. But I can be honest with you, this is generally an area that's not really inspected at a dealership lot. This is all manufacturing stuff because most RVs at dealership lots don't have disc brakes. Or if they do, it's typically not an area that they're going to expect beyond just making sure that it works. So let's take a look at some other areas of this. Okay, so I'm a little further underneath here now so you can see this part right here. You can see just kind of what's going on right here as well. But this hose, again, is going down right here. Now, one of the things that's bothering me is the fact that that right there is brake fluid. So I'm actually leaking brake fluid. Now, it doesn't look like it's leaking anymore. It looks like it's dried up and there's gunk all over it. But because of how this has been stretching, the back side of this is no longer intact and it's causing brake fluid to leak out around here. I also don't like how they only have these two really thin zip ties that are holding it to the axle. And you can see, let me just check that out. And every time I just slightly pull on this, you can see how it's pulling on this hose, and it's under tension. I mean, it's really, really pulling. You can see the bend up there. And it goes all the way to the other side, and there's one other zip tie that's holding it in place right there. So the back axle is exactly the same, except it has that same hard tubing, but it's going straight to it. So there's not even flex hose back there. So flexible hose should have been what they used to go to the axles, and it should have been longer in length. So ideally, the fix for all this is to go from this, which is still good, to a three-way splitter, and then have a 24-inch hose instead of an 18-inch hose right here, and then having another hard line coming out, going to another splitter, which then drops down with a rubber hose to the back axle. Also, these shouldn't be mounted low like this. If you hit anything, it's going to bust this entire line out. So this should have been bent up and around, which actually, if they had done that, it would have given me more flexibility right here because it would have relieved some of the stress on this specific hose. And then that back line back there, they could have even ran like a 6-foot flex hose off of this splitter right here all the way to the back, and it still would have been in good shape. But the main issues I have here, and I'll kind of lay them all out, the hose is too short. This is routed too low. It's like literally in the line if something hits it. It's leaking. It has tiny little zip ties holding it in place. It's got this very, very kind of flimsy one screw holding it in with a hose clamp. This should have all been secured better. It's going back to a zip tie right there, which is then being fed directly to the back axle to another splitter like this, which is held in place by two zip ties. And it's not a hard fix. It's just using the right stuff, right? And if this had been mounted better and higher up, this flex wouldn't have existed. If they had mounted this better with like steel hose clamps with like a rubber protector around the actual hose, this wouldn't have happened, right? The other area over here, well, that just should never have been ran like that. That should absolutely be a flexible rubber hose. And I want to be real with you guys. That's the reason why I'm doing all this. I know a lot of you folks go, you know what, you worked really close with Coachman. They did everything you want. Well, I also want to point out the ugly, and this is one of the ugly areas. Now, keep in mind, the vast majority of Coachman Brookstones are not sold with disc brakes. They're sold with electric drum brakes. And, you know, at this point, I almost wish that I got the electric drum brakes and not the disc brakes, just because I wouldn't even be dealing with this. You deal with a wiring issue potentially, but you're not dealing with a hydraulic fluid issue. And that's something that, you know, I hate to say it, but this is just something that is so easily to avoid with a little bit of oversight that it just kind of baffles me how something like this made it through the assembly line. And real quickly, I wanted to crawl back here just to kind of show you what's going on back here as well. You have the same situation going on, except you have a hard line coming up and going into the splitter, and that isn't very securely attached to the axle at all. It's held on by one zip tie here and one zip tie right over there. This all should have just been done entirely different. And, you know, I understand that there's some areas that you can cut corners slightly, that you can do things, and, you know, hopefully the way you did it is going to hold up and work well. But The braking system on an RV is absolutely not one area to do that. This should be an area that has tons of oversight, tons of inspections, and it's overbuilt. It's designed to perform in a way that you just won't risk these little things causing potentially major issues, especially if you're towing down a hill. You know, what happens if you lose your brakes? Anyways, guys, I sure hope you enjoyed the video. I know it's a different type of video, but again, you know, I want to call out everything. I don't just want to show you guys the upside to everything. You guys have to be aware of this stuff too. Guys, if you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up. We'll talk to you again very soon.